Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where we share human stories about people leveraging technology and, as a result, creating the new solutions that transform our life, work, industry, and in some cases, even world. And today I've lined up a fantastic guest. Her name is Megan Miller. She's one of the few guests on this podcast that I've actually met in real life before they come on the podcast. Usually I might speak to them on the podcast and then meet them in real life at a tech conference. But today, me and Megan have actually met twice before, and all will be revealed a little bit later. So Megan is coming on here today to share her story and share what happened when the worlds of technology and language collided. So buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Maryland so we can speak with Megan, who's waiting to share her story with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Megan. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am Megan Miller. I'm the founder and Spanish coach at Aprovechar Language Solutions. What that means is I take over 2 decades of existing as a Spanish as a second language learner, and I help my clients know both the language and the culture of the Spanish country that they're the most interested in. Whether it's those with the chronic wanderlust that want to live, travel, volunteer, or retire abroad, those retreat leaders that are hosting retreats in Spain and Latin America that want their attendees to have survival Spanish, or it could even be those in their home country, really just looking to connect with the Spanish-speaking population there a little bit more. I'm sure that we'll get into this a little later, but part of Aprovechar, I also offer IT translations from Spanish to American English. This is helping small to mid-sized tech firms in Spain and Latin America get their website, marketing material, user guides, really anything that they have ready for that American English US audience that they're trying to get to.
And for everyone listening at home, we have indeed met twice in person at conferences. I think it was in Denver and Chicago. Remember those days, conferences? It seems like a different age away, doesn't it?
I don't think I would even know how to pack a bag for a conference anymore. So next time you see me rolling up to a conference and I have 4 suitcases, I'm just getting back into the practice of things.
Either that or you've gone full diva on me. One of the two, right?
Hopefully not.
And although we have spoken twice and met in person there, one thing I've not heard from you is your origin story, where your passion for technology and language came from, and what put you on the path you're on today. Can I ask that you share that?
Sure. So it all started, I grew up literally in front of a cornfield in Ohio in the Midwestern US, and it was not diverse at all. So when I made the jump to college, I chose Syracuse University in upstate New York because of scholarships and because of the schools, but also because it really had the diversity that I felt that I was lacking. And Syracuse really offered me the chance to live both in Madrid, Spain, as well as Washington, D.C., helping the Latino immigration population in DC. So that was a wonderful thing. And after graduation, I moved to DC because I was like, well, it's smaller than New York City, but it's not Ohio. So I fell into technology consulting there, IT consulting. And I was there for little less than a decade, doing the problem solving, doing the IT project management, doing kind of the bits and bobs that help a project move forward. And because I kind of fell in technology, I liked it because I was very process oriented, and because to me it's almost like a language, but I always kind of felt like the middleman or woman between end users and developers. And so when I made the move, actually pre-pandemic, I decided to start Aprovechar. It was really to go back to my roots and find that purpose, fulfillment, really use the Spanish that I used for so often, kind of growing up and in college and living abroad.
I love that story. And I love how the worlds of technology and language collided for you, and you created almost your own bubble there. But can you tell me more about Approve HR, the language solutions that you created there, and why you set out to create it?
Sure. So I will start with a caveat, and that I think that all businesses evolve. So on this current evolution that I'm in with Approve HR had been in my head since about 2010. But it really came to fruition in 2020. And I created it from really 4 big concepts. Language, because language isn't just sentences and grammar and memorizing verb conjugations. It's the way that we connect. It's the jokes, it's the storytelling, it's how we convey emotions. And I knew that I wanted to do something with language and culture. I could argue that culture, becoming fluent in a culture, is kind of sometimes more important than becoming fluent in a language, because it's why people do what they do, but it's also why they care about what they care about. And knowing a culture, and lucky for us, they're symbiotic, culture and language, but knowing that culture would even allows you to get even more comfortable wherever you are. Also, I believe in language access. I think that languages should be accessible to everybody, which is why I have a lot of free things, because some language teachers or coaches, they'll ask for money up front. I'm like, no. I grew up very lower middle class, which was we had enough food to eat and we had enough gas to get to the library. But I traveled through books and movies growing up. I never spent the thousands of dollars in immersion trips. I really don't think that anybody else needs to either. If you do it strategically, you can learn a language, you can learn a culture straight from your couch. The last piece, this is the hardest piece for me and for everyone out there learning a language. It is constantly evolving. So some people you'll get in your bubble, but unless you're actually speaking with native speakers on the ground, so to speak, through Zoom, through, WhatsApp or whatever, it's only then that you can really hone in and become very precise with your language, because you're right there with them, even if you aren't physically there.
And one of the big reasons I invited you on the podcast today was when I recently read that you said that you believe that technology and language are eerily similar. And if you've learned how to code, you've actually learned a language. And I just love that concept and angle that you've come at it from there. But can you expand on what you meant there?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, it is all about kind of the purpose, right? Language, it can be transactional. Where's the bathroom? I'd like to buy this. But it can also be relational, meaning I want you to interact with me a certain way. I am a beginner coder, but what I have found from my beginning coding experiences is the same thing. When you create a web page or you create a box, right? It's either transactional or relational. And as a coder, you need to figure out exactly what you need from that person that's interacting with that web page or that box. And you need to make it so that it's very intuitive for them, so that they know, oh, this is a name field. This is a form. This is a hero block, and I need to click on an image which will be linked. You need to kind of think through that. The same way as a language, you need to think through sentence structure and what nuance do I want to convey with some of my word choices, right? Because every word has a connotation. And if I say, as per my last email, or just following up, those have different connotations in the language that I use. Web pages, boxes, coding, it's the same thing. And what's really exciting, I'm so excited about this, because Adam Grant, in his latest Granted newsletter, actually shared a study that shows that this is true. So granted, they were using Python, which is more of that English paragraph bit, but it is a scientific research paper that shows that coding, the quickness that we pick up on coding isn't math or cognitive ability, but it's actually language aptitude. which is fascinating to me because it's all about that communication and the context and, the nuance of your words.
So cool. A question I've got to ask, of course, is Approve HR. Where does the name come from? It's an incredibly cool name, but there's got to be a story there, right?
Yes, I chose that just to throw everyone off because I feel like I need to come with a phonetic spelling for it everywhere I go. Aprovechar or aprovechar is a Spanish verb. It means to make the most of or to take advantage of. When I was in Spain, I was eating cheese sandwiches every day for lunch. I was very poor. And I spent a lot of the time in the city walking around, visiting other neighborhoods, taking pictures, just trying to, get into the vibe of the city, so to speak. My host mom would always tell me to aprovechar la ciudad, or to take advantage of the city, to make the most of my time there. And it just kind of became a personal mantra for me after. And when it comes down to language and some of the solutions that I provide around language, the tools are out there. All we need to do is just take advantage of them and make the most of them, make the most of the technology that we have.
So how does it work? Do you have any, customer stories that you might be able to share just to bring to life what we're talking about here for people listening all over the world?
Yes. So as a Spanish coach, I know everyone is a coach these days, but really the coaching concept to me comes in both the language and the routine integration, because I teach both of those, meaning it's up to you to do the work. I just, as a coach, I guide you through it and make sure that you are as ready as you can be. So teaching not only language, sentence structure, phrases, pronunciation, also the culture. Here are small talk conversation starters. Here are topics to avoid. Here's things that show up in the music, the movies, newspapers that we don't normally see wherever we are in the world. And then, of course, the real magic comes into the routine integration. So we all know, if you don't use it, you lose it. And really, the routine integration to me is making it so that Spanish is just part of your routine. It's a habit. You don't think about it, you just do it. Do it for 10 minutes every day. Do it for an hour every day. It doesn't have to be this big goal to read a Spanish book every day or every week. If you can do little bits here and there throughout the day to bring Spanish into your daily life, to really make it so that it's part of you and you're constantly surrounded by it.
Well, you've been on an incredible ride here, and I love how the worlds of technology and language have collided for you. But in creating this solution, I'm curious, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned on this journey, would you say?
Ironically, words matter. Yeah. That's one of the biggest lessons. The words that I think, the words that I use, the words that other people use, because I learned Spanish at such a young age, and I really made it part of my university journey and part of my postgraduate journey, right? And kind of the tutoring and teaching work that I've done postgraduate. Language to me, it's everywhere. When you learn Spanish, it affects your career. It affects your family life. It affects your ability to connect with people in the most random situations, at airports, in the grocery store, right? I just kind of have translated or interpreted ad hoc for people because they can't get their words across. Sometimes it's hard for me to take a step back from that and say, other people don't think of that in that same perspective, because they come to me and they say, well, I want to learn Spanish so that I can connect with my students better, or so that I can prepare for this volunteer trip, or I want to be fluent because it's part of my life's goals to become fluent in a language. And that's great, but it's so abstract. When you actually break it down into some of its components and parts, language affects not only your ability to connect with people in a whole different world than your own, but you also learn a lot more about your native language during that time too. And you can really become a better communicator at both your first maternal language as well as your second language.
And when you're working with your customers here, what kind of feedback have you received? Do you get to hear stories of how you've helped them, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many good stories to choose from.
Yeah.
One of my clients had recently had their first baby, and they were so excited to be able to call their grandmother in Puerto Rico and tell them in Spanish all about the new addition to the family. Or the group of COVID doctors and nurses in South Florida being able to help their COVID patients become a little bit more confident in the care that they were receiving, because they were able to say things like, take these pills 3 times a day in Spanish, make sure that they understood. So that has been amazing. And really the biggest thing that I get from it that is the most enjoyable for me is that it's fun. We're laughing, we're joking, we're smiling. Language doesn't have to be, the school setting that we were taught, because what I try to do is combine the book smarts and the street smarts. I say this is how the proper language is. But when was the last time you actually spoke proper English grammar?
Well, there's a big argument on that one right there. Yeah, absolutely.
No one really speaks that proper English grammar. So it's all about, here's how it is, theoretically. But here's an interview with a reggaeton singer or with a rapper or with a bachata singer. And you can see and hear the accents and the pronunciation and the word choices that they use. So it's combining those two worlds to really make it realistic for them.
And I think what I love most about your story is that you didn't fit into this typical IT stereotype and didn't fit in with the huge educational conglomerates. So you made your own bubble. And for me, that is inspirational. And I suspect there will be people listening all over the world that feel the exact same way. And those words alone will resonate with them. So for those people, what advice would you offer?
Trust your gut. And even if you feel weird, keep doing what really lights that spark in your soul. Sometimes purpose can be found in the strangest of places. And it's not until we are physically or just time passes and we're removed from that environment that we can look back and say, oh, that's the transformation that was happening back then. When you're in the thick of it, you don't think of that and you just feel awkward or you feel incomplete in some way. So just keep chasing whatever that thing is that brings you that completeness, I think would be the biggest piece of advice I could give.
Wise words indeed. And if we dare to look into the future and look into your virtual crystal ball, is there anything in particular that excites you about how the world of technology is evolving, how you will continue to evolve with that changing landscape too?
Yeah, absolutely. And COVID is actually, I'm not going to call it a blessing because that would just be wrong. But as far as the world of technology, it has really provided us a kick in the pants that I think we needed. So more virtual events, more virtual tours, more virtual networking, things like Remo, where it really simulates an in-person networking event where you can go to a different table and have side conversations. So I'm really excited to see what technology has to bring for us, because that's really just providing people with the ability to go in depth into a conversation or into a tour or a place or a people or a culture without ever having to leave your couch, which is amazing.
It really is. And you've very kindly shared your story with me today. And a question I always like to ask my guests before I let them go is share a little bit of information about the soundtrack to that journey as well. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is there a particular song or piece of music that has accompanied you on your journey, reminds you of your career in tech, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage? Is there a song and story you can share with us today?
I think the The most current song for me has been a song called Free by Rudimental, and Amélie Sandé sings on that. And some of the words go, "C'est la vie, maybe something's wrong with me, but at least I'm free." And I love it because "C'est la vie," there is no real translation for it. It's just "C'est la vie." And it provides that beat and the language and the lyrics that just get you in the zone a little bit.
And if you could sing that for me, that'd be brilliant. No, I'm joking. And you've also planted the seed of "C'est la vie" by, was it Robbie Neville back in the 80s? I'm going to have that earworm playing in my head now. But before I let you go, before I let you go, can you remind everyone listening of where they can find you online and contact you if they've got any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is aprovecharlanguagesolutions.com, and I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram at Aprovechar Language Solutions. If you type in Aprovechar, I should pop up. So, or Language Solutions.
Excellent. Well, there's so much I've loved about your story, how technology and language have collided for you, and also how they are eerily similar. And if you've learned to code, like you've said, you've learned a language there. So more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and share that story with me today. Thank you, Megan.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for just providing such amazing questions. I think the soundtrack question, everyone needs to have a good soundtrack in their head.
Absolutely. Wow, what a cool story. And I just love how she pointed out that technology and language are eerily similar. And if you have learned to code, you have essentially learned a new language. But I think more than anything, what really inspired me was how she didn't find herself fitting into that typical IT stereotype, and also didn't fit in the huge educational conglomerates. So she made her own bubble. And that is a story that really resonates with me. It reminds me a lot of my story and how I got here talking into this microphone to you every day. So please, wherever you're listening to the world, if you're told no at every direction you go, if you've got a smartphone in your pocket, you can create, you can broadcast, you can stream, you can share content all around the world, and there will be an audience of people just like you wanting to learn from your story, and you can inspire people to do the same too. And as I cheesily say at the end of every episode of this podcast, technology works best when it brings people together. And let's be honest, language plays a big part in that. So the way that Megan has fused the worlds of language and technology together to bring people together, inspirational stuff. But please let me know your thoughts about Megan's story. And also, if you know somebody that is a good fit for this podcast, maybe they've got a similar story, please send them my way. And you can do that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So all that's left for me to say as we reach the end of this episode is a big thank you to Megan for taking the time to come on here and share her story with us all today. But also a huge thank you to you guys and dolls that tune into this podcast every day from all over the world and share your input as well. That is at the very heart and soul of what this show is all about and why I sit here every day talking into a microphone. So a big thank you for listening. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. Well, until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.